Welcome to In Conversation with Brad Wendes. I've got another fantastic guest for you today. The man should need no introduction. This is Carlos from Emmerdale. And for those uninitiated in the soaps, this is Gary Turner, who's a fantastic actor. He's got some great stories to tell. He's a really interesting man. So let's get on with it. Gary, welcome. Hello.
Hello. Pleased to be here.
I'd like to know a little bit more about your past and your background and what kind of got you into where you've ended up. Because I know a little bit about your more recent life, but where did it start?
Well, it was a cold and frosty morning, 14th of March, 1968, and I thought, no. It's a good question because I think all actors have a reason why they chose, that they went that. And it's, I didn't come from a very theatrical background, although my mum was a frustrated performer. My dad was to a certain extent too. But, my mum and dad, they had me late. I mean, I'm 55 now. I was born in 68. My mum was 35 and my dad was 45 when he had me. So they were kind of a generation behind all the other parents. So they were kind of, you didn't do that kind of thing. You didn't actually become an actor. Where do I start? I was an only child, although I did have I've got a half brother and half sister, but they were much older. Mum and dad had marriages before me, so I was and they'd made a bit of money by the time I came along. So I was the only kid and spoiled. I was born with a club foot, so I had a lot of operations on my foot to correct that. So as a result of that, I wasn't very active, and I was this is leading somewhere, don't worry. I was big. I was a large child. I was the fat kid at school. So I was an only child. I was fat. I had a club foot, and I was a bit of a dickhead. I was bullied. My dad, who was always self-employed, they had a business, and it was the late 70s, early 80s, and they were making a bit of money, so they decided to send me to a private primary school. Which, you kind of aspired to that from the background that my mum and dad came from. But I didn't really fit in because the school that they chose to send me, I was at school with like lords and ladies' kids, and they, if you wanted to sing, you became a member of the Chester Cathedral Choir, which I did actually. But the choir master ended up throwing a set of keys and they hit me in the head, and I had to go to A&E, and it was all But it being then, of course, it was just forgotten. But that's another story. It wasn't great. And then my mum took me to the hospital. I went on this diet. And so as I'm about 11 now, I'm 10, 11 now, coming out of primary school. And the dietitian at the hospital, this 2 years, so I could lose weight as I grow up. It kind of adds insult to injury, really. So mum and dad didn't send me to private secondary school, but they tried to pick the best school that they could find, which is a lovely school, which was on the other side of town. I knew nobody there. I was a fat kid. I had a club foot. I was on a diet. And I was a bit of a dickhead. And I was out of the catchment area for the school, so I didn't know anyone. So you can imagine how those first years went.
Yeah.
That was baptism by just getting beat up behind the sports halls and getting called names and getting picked last, and I don't want to go to. It wasn't that tragic. It says, the story I'm telling wasn't that tragic, but the reason I lay that background is then I went to drama club, and all of a sudden nobody cared whether I had a club foot or whether I was overweight or whatever, and we were all it was like where the misfits went. The drama teacher there, Lynn Thompson, who I kept in touch with, looked after us, and then over those few years I did lose the weight. I started to get confident, and I liked acting. I liked being at drama club, and there were girls there.
So just stepping back, was the drama club part of the school?
Yes, it was the school drama club.
The moving school was the catalyst of kind of finding this.
It was graduating from. There was no drama club at the primary school. There was like show days where she'd get people to stand up and say poems and stuff like that, but nothing. Not an after school club. And then there was the school plays, and then I got involved with the local. The county council used to run residential courses, and I went off on one of those, and by the age of about 13 I was like, I want to be an actor. And then I joined the local youth theatre. And then I just did absolutely, that was it then. I just did any acting, joined everything and anything I could be part of. So I joined the local theatre then in Chester, where I'm from. It was called the Gateway Theatre. So I joined the Young Gateway. And, I made friends there at 12 years old that Pete is still my best friend. It's sort of kind of life solidifying stuff. And then, but that was when I first came into contact with real actors, because we were the kids that were hanging around the theatre, and we were always, Saturdays we'd hang around at the theatre. We'd go to the youth theatre and do whatever we did, but then we'd spend the day making a nuisance of ourselves running around, and and if there was a production on, we'd always be angling to see how we could get it. Was just, that was our life. That's what we wanted to do, getting to see the plays, or and then as we became 15, 16, we got to know everybody, and the guy that ran the youth theatre was also on the staff at the theatre, and so we started to get pulled in doing the get-ins, the get-outs, so we got a knowledge of and because it was the 80s, there were no restrictions or legislations about, so 15, 16-year-old, you'd be working 2-3 o'clock in the morning, you get tired, you go and sleep in the flower tower, get up and then carry on with building the set and helping.
But you had access to something you loved, and
it was heaven. It was heaven.
What I'm getting from that is kind of a running theme when I talk to people about their passions and when they've kind of found a career in something they love, is that feeling of belonging and that identity.
Absolutely.
So you were the fat kid, and now you're the theatre kid.
I had gone. I found my place. I'd found my tribe.
Yeah,
basically.
Absolutely,
yes.
100%.
Yes, yeah. And it was a lovely. It was a lovely moment, actually. It was before drama school or any of that, because I desperately wanted to be accepted. See, that, I think, that's been kind of a governing, not to get too sort of deep about it all, but, standing up on stage and being good and then getting applause is a great sense of validation, etc. I mean, we all want some kind of validation, but I wanted to be accepted, and it was really hard those first few years at school. And I remember, and there was times that I'd get invited to a party, and because I lived on the other side of town, I'd cycle all the way over, and they'd be waiting, and I'd turn up and they'd shut the door in my face, and I'd be like, oh, okay, this isn't great.
Wow.
Anyway, there was one year, I'm not saying that they were so bad, I probably was, I think I was a bit of a me person. There was one time I had gone off and I'd made all the other friends. I'd become the theatre kid, and I had my friends in the Cheshire Youth Theatre and my friends in the Gateway Youth Theatre, and so I didn't need these guys at school anymore. And as a consequence of that, they started to phone me up and said, "Oh, does Gary want to come to a party?" All of a sudden, I developed in my own sense a new sense of fashion. I wasn't one of them anymore. And all of a sudden, that was and I kind of went from that guy with the target on his head to, by the time, and I couldn't wait to get out of school. School was not my cup of tea at all. So I left in the 5th year, just after doing what we called O-levels then, GCSEs. But I was the only kind of 5th year that was going out with a 6th former. It was kind of like,
Something else I've seen both in my own social circles and kind of in talking to people is that when you're desperately trying to be accepted and be liked, it makes you quite unacceptable, and
it makes you unattractive.
And it's not until you stop trying you find yourself.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit pretentious. Yeah.
Well, you don't find yourself. You just stop worrying about yourself.
Yeah, you find your niche and you find your thing.
The people, it seems to me, the people who are the most attractive, who seem to be most individual, complete individuals, are those that are interested in the world around them. They are connected to the world around them. It's sort of like you meet somebody who's connected to themselves, or they've spent time working on themselves, and it's always a bit missing. I always feel a bit like, but somebody's going, oh, this, and I've read this book, and I know this, and I know that, and that's interesting, and you're interesting, tell me about that, then all of a sudden you get these kind of, I've got Stephen Fry in my mind. There is a man who is deeply, deeply troubled, but he's such a fully formed character, and he's so intelligent, but he's so interested and connected to the world around him and cares deeply. Ricky Gervais is another one that springs to mind. I think what I loved about acting was the story, was creating the story, was living the story. My favourite film is Blade Runner, I have watched it 100 times. I've read the books. I've got some memorabilia. I'm a kind of a bit of a geek about it. But I just wanted to be that guy in the coat on the rain-swept streets. It wasn't about winning the Oscar. That came later, wanting that kind of stuff. But it was never about that. It was about...
want to be Decker.
I wanted to be Decker. I wanted to be Han Solo. I wanted to be, I wanted to be in The Princess Bride. I wanted to soar. I wanted to do all that great stuff. And
you had some great films growing up.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 80s, so we watched Return of the Jedi on VHS over and over and over again at my uncle's house. So that was...
Do you know Highlander, right? Which I adore Highlander. Do you know they're remaking it? With Henry Cavill,
so that'd be good. Cavill's a good fighter. He's a great actor, and he cares about the source material.
And he'll be involved. He won't do it if it's shit.
No,
so,
we're looking at what happened.
Nice one, Henry.
The first season of The Witcher, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I was like, it's kind of petering off a little bit.
Yeah.
But I watched the first Highlander film recently again, and it hadn't aged as well as I'd have hoped.
No, I think I watched it not long ago, a couple of months ago.
Like the car park fight scene where there's the backflips down the... I'm like, they don't do that anymore. Like, it's a fun film.
And so un-PC as well. You forget how un-PC shit was then.
Well, you've got things like... a lot of old Disney films now have warnings on, don't they? About, this contains outdated themes. I'm like, well, maybe don't draw attention to it, would be my feeling.
They have to. It's just it'll
it's
pass.
The way of the world,
But you just that stuff they have to do that, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
Or do they cut it out or change or get rid of the film? And it's no, but it's sort of, it's like, do you get rid of the slave trader statues kind of thing? Do you?
Again, it's a conversation I'm having with lots of people. I think it's because that's what the world's doing at the moment, and I feel like you can't learn from history if you erase it.
I couldn't agree more. Keep the statues and as a lesson.
Don't ever burn the books. Don't burn the books.
Don't burn the books. No, no.
So those things need to exist for us to
go.
go.
Writing history anyway. It's awful.
But those things need to exist so you go. Oh, actually, that was acceptable then, and we know that it's not now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you need to put a neon sign around it, because I think there's a lot of things that just living in the world. You're like, oh yeah, you can't say that now, but this was made in the 30s, and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this kind of, it leads me to the next stage. We moved from Chester to North Wales, and I ended up joining the Clwyd Youth Theatre, which is based in Mold. And I didn't want to move from Chester. I didn't, it was that age. We'd just done Jesus Christ Superstar, and I just left school, and I wanted to go to the further education college and be with the cool kids and do theatre studies. And then all of a sudden, Mum and Dad go, no, we've got to move to Wales now, which is only about 40 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
But then when you're 15 and, that's like, oh, my life's over now. That was tricky, but I ended up joining the Clwyd Youth Theatre, and they had residential courses. So I ended up going that way, and that turned out to be leagues above what was going on in Chester.
Okay.
So I'd done all the Gateway stuff, and I started to make new friends there, and there was the teacher there who was getting kids into drama school. And it was, from this tiny little Welsh county called Clwyd, about 8 or 9 kids would be going off to different drama schools. Now, I don't know if you knew, but back then there was a list of like accredited drama schools. There are 30 places. I'm talking about like RADA, Guildhall, Bristol Old Vic, Central, Lambda, Mount View, all of those, the biggies. Yeah. This guy was getting 8, 9, 10 kids in a year into all these drama schools. He ended up being prosecuted for he liked his boys.
Oh.
Talk about the way life being a different thing then. Like on my first day of, I remember turning up at the residential course. The guys who knew the score, and this was the way the world went at the time. They went, watch out for so-and-so. He's going to be in your bedroom first thing in the morning to have a look at your morning glory. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. So I locked the door, and hey presto, first thing in the morning the door would be rattling, and everybody knew. We had the nous to navigate that. It was the way the world was at the time, and it was like, oh, he's fat man. We called him fat man, but we wanted, he was teaching us to get into drama school.
Yeah.
At the time, we didn't know there were other kids that weren't as savvy as us. It's horrendous. It's a whole other conversation for a different podcast, but yeah.
But you're right, and again, it happens through the years where someone who's done some really amazing and good things, but has also done some horrendous things, they don't balance each other out. You know, those kids that have gone to drama school as a result of this person, that might have gone on to do wonderful things, some of them might also have some horrendous memories and have some trauma and crap to deal with.
I know people. Yes, there is a guy. He came into the youth theatre. I didn't know him that well. He came into that youth theatre as I was leaving that youth theatre, and he is now damaged. He went off to drama school, and he was a very good actor, good little actor and stuff, but damaged because of, you know, what went on. Yes, even then, the idea was that. That's just the way it goes. That, you know, shit happens. It wasn't until I had my own children, and if I thought any teacher, no matter what they were doing, because all our parents thought this teacher was amazing. But anyway, I digress. If I thought anything like that, my children were in that situation, I would go in there with a chainsaw and a machine gun and.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of an aside, but. So I recently became a father. I've got an 18-month-old daughter, and I love her to pieces. And it does change your perspective on things. And I think about, again, just very personal stuff. I have a very odd relationship with my biological father. So I saw so many similarities with what you were saying. I was born into a family that had a couple of quid, you know, not loads of money. And I went to private school until I was 5-6 years old.
Okay, yeah.
My parents separated when I was 5 at Christmas. And
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really see anything of my dad, and I went from living in quite a nice house with Porsches and Range Rovers and going to private school to living in a one-bedroom flat with mum sleeping on the sofa and her having to work 2 jobs and me having holes in my shoes. So for a 6-year-old, that was a real big jump. And I found in the gymnastic club at school when I was around 11 that identity, that belonging.
Solace, sanctuary.
But you're right, that's
a safe
sort of,
place. Yeah.
But just jumping back to like the reflections of being a parent, I go through in my head like dad wasn't there and we didn't have any money and all of this kind of, and I was a very, very, very poor upbringing. Never went on holiday with my mum after the age of 5 years old. It was a real difficult time. And I look back and I'm like, well, you know, dad this and dad that. And as soon as I had a child and I'm kind of a year or 18 months into childhood, I'm like, there is no way on earth that I would let that little girl have holes in her shoes and not have enough food to eat. You know, and even now when times are getting a little bit hard, she has food, she has toys, she gets to do all the things
I'm the
she
same
wants to
with
do.
mine. Mine are 13 and 15 now, but it's exactly the same.
We'll have beans on toast so that she's had a decent meal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I now actually as a 40-year-old man judge my father more for not being around than when I was a child and a teenager going without. It's a real strange realisation.
I think children are brilliant because whatever is their normality is their reality. Do you know what I mean? I just made that up. It's quite good. But, you know, whatever is their world is normal to them. They don't know any better. So, you know, you were like, okay, no, I've got holes in my shoes and I've got this to do. I like gym club. Do you know what I mean? That's the way kids survive. And then when you get out of that and you look back and you go, I was dealing with stuff that I had no need to deal with because of somebody else's behaviour.
And as an adult looking back, I was like, how on earth did my mum even cope with that time, working 2 jobs, sleeping? Yeah, well, it really does add perspective to it when you're a parent or when you're a grown up, because I'm like, you know, you're growing up and you're like, when am I going to be an adult? When am I going to be an adult? And I'm like 40, I'm like, I'm probably an adult now, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
But then we've both had the privilege of doing something that we enjoy, and I'm sure we'll get to it, and it's not always plain sailing. It's not easy.
That's like my mum. I was kind of, because I was the prodigal son, and it's like, you know, I remember going home to my dad. You know, I was talking about when I went to the gig, I started meeting real actors who were doing the plays in the, you know, in the stage, and we got to it. We would get by the time I was 17 and stuff, I was getting drafted in to play the dead bodies and the spear carriers in the local Shakespeare productions and stuff like that. So you'd be in productions with the real actors, and I remember having a conversation with Dad saying, I hadn't realised this, but they're like real people. They come in and they sit and have a cup of coffee and read the paper and talk about the same stuff that you talk about. But my dad was like, it's not a real job. It's not. It's no. When are you gonna? You know, you've got to do something else. He wasn't strict, and he was a lovely man, and he cared. He wanted me to do well, is where he was coming from, and he just thought, people don't become actors. That's something that posh other people do. you know. And also at this time, the business had, you know, they'd come out of the lovely Thatcher years of making lots of money, you know, coughing up money left, right, and centre. They'd gone bankrupt and lost everything, and that's why we had to move to Wales. So, funnily enough, similarly to you know, went from everything being lovely and a new car every year, and to kind of like, no, we can't afford anything. We're just lucky to have this house that we live in, and you know, the bailiffs turning up at the doors and all that kind of stuff. Cut a long story short, I did a deal. He said, "You've got to get A levels," and I said, "Okay." He said, "If you get your A levels, then you can, you know, you could probably go to university and study something, so you can keep acting as a hobby." So I kind of went with that for a while, but in here, I was going to go to drama school, and eventually I did. And I was going to do a couple of auditions to get to know what it was like, and then I was going to go interrailing. Do you remember what interrailing was? You know what I'm talking about now? No. Back in the 80s, that's what you did. You took a year off, and you could buy a ticket.
Yes.
And go round Europe.
Yep.
You got one train ticket round Europe, unlimited travel. Brilliant. Interrailing. I was going to do that. I auditioned for Bristol, didn't get in. Auditioned for RADA, got in. Boom. The best, the drama school of dreams. When I got, my mum was over the moon, and my dad was proud, but he still was like, "What are you going to do after you've been to this RADA?" Literally, he was like, he came to see the shows. He was proud, and you know, it was never like, there was no real animosity. He just didn't get it, and. I could talk for hours just about the time at drama school. When I was coming out of the other side of RADA, and I'd got an agent, and Granada TV had started sniffing around because I was auditioning for a show called Families, a daytime soap opera, and they were based in Manchester. So it was like one weekend, and I thought, well, my parents lived not far from Manchester, so I went up the night before to stay at my parents' house for the final recall for this screen test for the show. And I remember sitting there with my dad. So it's this Families, and I said, my mum had recorded one on the VHS, and she said, "Oh, so it's this programme?" I said, yes. And my dad said, "So what happens if you get past this audition?" I said, "Well, I'll get the job." And he went, "You're going to be on the telly?" I went, "Yeah."
And what year was this, just for some context?
That would be 91.
So 91, we had 4 channels on terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
There was far less, like now.
Did we have Channel 5 then? No, I don't think
we had Channel 5,
no.
I think that was late 90s. So
1, 2, 3 and 4, yeah.
And I think TV still kind of finished at a particular time. It wasn't 24 hours. I think we still had like,
morning TV had started. I remember that kicking off, Good Morning Britain.
So when you're looking at like your ability to be an actor in the early 90s was far less than it is now, because now you can put something on YouTube, or you could, there's a wealth of streaming services that are looking for content. Yeah. Whereas now you got like, Sky TV was probably in its infancy, if it had launched at all.
Yeah.
So to be an actor on television was like, oh, you're on TV. There's not many people on TV.
But it was funny, but I think maybe there were less actors, but all the actors seemed to be working. But that moment, my dad sort of went, "Oh." And I remember the turn of his head, and I remember thinking, "Yes, fuck yeah." You see? And it's like, since then, after that, and then obviously the audition was successful, and he was like, "Oh, that's what you do." And he was, insanely proud. My dad's upbringing, and he was born in 24, so he was, and he wasn't allowed to they wouldn't let him go to school, so he couldn't read and write. So I think when he hit 15, he lied about his age and ran away to the army. Went to Tunisia, went to Italy, got demobbed in Chester, and thought, "I'm not going back to London. I don't like it there." So stayed in Chester, and with his demob cash or whatever, got himself in a chip shop, and so he was always self-employed. So that was his world. That was his. It wasn't. He didn't come from a point of, "Oh, my dream is to do this." His dream was to survive and to have enough money to look after his family. And that was a massive triumph to him.
Yeah. And so just jumping back on the sort of daytime soap opera.
Yeah.
You got the part.
Yeah.
You've gone into it.
Yeah.
And how was that? You know, you've come out of drama school. Was it like, it's just another show, or is it, wow?
Oh, no, I've got to say this, actually, just going back a bit. I got my first agent, her name was Jean Diamond, with a company called London Management. Huge office on Regent Street. There's me, scraggy Gary, just coming, leaving RADA, sitting in the office, and she said, I'm very interested in representing you, and, I've arrived, this is brilliant. And she said, where do you see your career going? And I was like, I would like to go to the RSC and the National and do gritty new films, and one day maybe I'll work with Martin Scorsese, or that kind of thing. But one thing I'm sure of is that I don't want to do soap opera. I don't like soap. And she went, okay, that's fine. I think we can manage that. I think within 3 weeks, I'd looked at this contract and gone, how much? Weirdly, I mean, this is in 91, Families was paying as much money as Emmerdale was going to pay back in 2000. I mean, there was so much money in the business at that time. You just sneezed and money appeared. So I'm doing this play, the long, the short and the tall. Having a great time, we're rehearsing, and I get this message saying, you've got the part, we want you to start on such and such a date. And the director goes, and it's a bit contractual with RADA as well. When you do your final shows, you're doing shows. You're not. It's not just like a student thing. It's paying theatre and tickets. And the director goes, I don't want to lose you, Gary. We're doing this play here, and it was also the culmination of 3 years of training with my mates, and we were having a good time doing it. We were playing soldiers, and So we went back to Granada and went, well, can I just not start 4 days later? And they came back and they said, no, but here's what we'll do. I spent my last 3 days at RADA. I would go into college, do the show, come out of RADA, get on a train, sleep on the train, wake up in Manchester, film in the morning. They would then fly me back to London, and then taxi me to RADA. I did that for 3 or 4 days.
Something really worth throwing money at this thing.
Things were a bit different then. People had doing adverts and soap operas was not the RSC and not the thing, So there was like streams of graffiti about me in the phone box at RADA, people sticking up. And I remember, obviously I was a student. We didn't have to do with student loans then. You got a grant, but you had no money. So your student loan was your overdraft. And I think I had about $3,000 overdraft, which was
a lot of money back then.
Back in 91, it was huge, And I remember sitting in the car. I was being picked up at the advert at the airport with this guy on day one. I had no money, and I went, "Is there any chance I can get some money?" And the next day he picked me up and he said, "Oh, right, there's some money for you there. That's the only time that we're going to do this." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I'm thinking, "Phew, brilliant, coffee money." I opened this envelope. There's 300 quid in it. That's I mean, what, 91? How much would that be now? That would be 600, 700, 800 quid?
Easy, yeah.
It's like just somebody giving, there's, and I've been living like a student. I remember sitting in the dressing room after the final show, and it was our last day. It was our final day as well. And I went, boys, I've got 300 quid. There then proceeded to be a God Almighty.
That's a good party.
God Almighty party, and obviously I was very popular. I was buying all the drinks. So yeah, and then but that transition was really weird. It wasn't a big program. It was a daytime soap. But it still had a little fan base. So I started. The adjusting was quite weird. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. I wasn't keeping money for tax. And I thought, well, this is life now. I'm just gonna and you would get living expenses. you'd get your fee, which was handsome, and you'd also get per diems. So, like, every week, the trolley would come round with these envelopes in, going, oh, there you go, there's your per diems. And you're like, this is cash.
Yeah.
You know.
So for anyone who's not au fait with the sort of performance industry, I think every job should have per diems. Every single job in the world should.
Yes.
You just get given. That just means it's your per day allowance, so that you can buy some lunch, get a coffee, do whatever you need to do, go to the bus or whatever you need to do. Yeah. You just get money. Yeah. And yeah, when we've been on TV shows and things like, oh, there's your per diems. And
we got that. I was on tour in Japan in 19. I was in Japan, and the per diems were very handsome for that job.
You've always just got a little bit of money in your pocket. It's great.
Yeah. I'd arrived. It was a bit frustrating. I didn't want to be in soap opera, but in my head, I was then. And Goodfellas came out, and I watched the shit out of that. I was like, I want to go to America, and I want to be with Martin Scorsese and do all that. For my final recall for RADA, I was doing. It's a bit of a running thing here. I was doing Animal Farm at Theatre Clwyd, so I had to finish Animal Farm, get on a train at 2:00 in the morning, travel to London, and then be at RADA in the afternoon for my recall. Obviously, a friend of mine had a friend who lived in London, who looked after me, and obviously I'd been up at night. I was 20 years old, and I turned up at his flat, going, "Hello, I've got an audition for RADA in about 4 or 5 hours, and it's really early in the morning. Thanks for having me." And he was brilliant, Jez. And he went, "Go and have a shower, have something to eat." And I had a shower and I came in, come on, let's watch Highlander. And put Highlander on the VCR. And I swear that film got me into RADA, because there could be only one. There could be only one, and that only one was me. As I was walking down Tottenham Court Road, the Queen soundtrack blasting mine, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to,
But those kind of stories and those kind of things that I don't know everyone does, and I think that brings us back to the reason that I wanted to get some people on this podcast, because you've spoken about 2 occasions where you've had to do a day's work and get on a train or get on a plane or and do kind of 20-hour days and things. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't do that.
It wouldn't be in their vocabulary.
And sometimes, and I think saying yes to things and then having to try and work it out is a big one. And I remember we were doing a promo tour for Samsung. Okay. These little Samsung released an MP3 player that was going to kill the iPod. Spoiler, it didn't.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. And we were taking these things around universities. So we were in this tour bus and we're going to universities doing acrobatics, and we had the promo girls doing the selling of the product.
Sounds like you'd have had an awful time doing that.
Oh, it was horrendous going around doing tricks at universities, student union bars. Oof. And I'd got my agent had got in touch with me and said, "Oh, could I do this film?" I'm like, "Yeah, when is it?" And they're like, "Oh, it's shooting quite soon. They just need a load of extra people to do some of the featured work because they need some bigger close up of the screen." I'm like, "Okay." And it was night shoots in central London. And it was at the time that the Samsung tour was at, I think we were...
Aberdeen.
No, fortunately, Royal Holloway, and we were at, what's the university at Uxbridge, wherever it is. We were inside the M25. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I'd done all day of acrobatics, then gone to set, where they feed you breakfast after you've gone through hair and makeup, even though it's 9 o'clock at night. Done a night shoot, then rocked up straight back, ready for it. I did 2 days. I was like, I can't do this. And I had to get someone to cover me on some of the acrobatics because, I just genuinely. So I did what was
it's dangerous as well, isn't it?
48 hours of continuous doing stuff that I definitely couldn't do these days. And I think
equity have a rule now. You have to have a 12-hour break.
Yeah. Oh, they actually treat it like proper employment now. And people, it's good because employers can't take the piss. But at the same time, sometimes the productions do require a little bit of flexibility. But looking at that, I'm like, I know a lot of people that would go, "Oh, I'd love to do that, but I can't. I wouldn't do that." Or, "Can you do that film?" No. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, that I'm just like, well, how hard can it be? We just have to make it happen. And there was a big job came in, one of the highest paying performance gigs of my life. It kind of paid towards the deposit of our house. The was we did all of the crowd entertainment for the T20 cricket for 2 seasons.
Okay.
So we were at every televised event, and we had a team of people there, and it was good money. The guys got good money. We got per diems. We had a
Is this
travel
your
package.
company, by the
This is my
stage?
company. This
Yeah,
was quite
yeah.
recent. This was 2015, 2016.
Oh, okay, got you.
So much more recently. And but when we were pitching for it, my then wife, not my wife anymore, had said, I don't know we can get this application. I don't know we can fill this paperwork out. And I was like, look at this contract. She's like, we've just got too much else on at the moment. I don't know that we can get all the stuff back to him. I was like, we just have to. I remember exactly where I was, and I was on the phone to her. I said, we just have to fill out as much as you can. When I finish doing what I'm doing, I'll come and we'll get it done, because there's no way we can go, oh, this is too much work. We just have to. And we did. I think 2015 was also the year I got married. So we had the wedding to plan and the honeymoon and things, and trying to organise what was the biggest logistical job. It was 30 days over the course of the year with a team at each event, and the logistics of getting there and back, and all the hotels and all the costumes and everything. Like it was a massive job, and 2 of us organising it. I remember her going,
Wow, that's amazing.
I remember her saying, we can't do this. And I was like, we just have to. And we did, and that was one of the most profitable jobs we've ever done, and it was so much fun. It was a really enjoyable gig. So I think there's that, when someone says, can you do X, and you're like, some people are like, no, and some people will go, well, yeah, would you have to make it happen?
I am so much behind what you just said, and it's that until my children appeared.
Yes.
But that is not. That's a happy compromise.
Yeah.
That is. I remember bumping into an old teacher of mine in a park in London, and him saying to me, "You should be concentrating." And I was playing with Betsy, who was then about 3 or 4 in the park, and he was like, "You don't spend much energy on your career, then? You're doing this," and I was like, "Yeah, I am." Yeah.
And even that's a difference of opinion. So that when we found out Tash was pregnant and Poppy's come along, I'm running the business, and I was running the business solo at the time, and I had someone who was kind of our office manager, admin manager, who was working for us. And I said, look, I want to take 6 weeks off paternity. I want to take 2 weeks off before the due date, so I've got a month off after. We can just kind of find our groove, and cool. And we'd made arrangements that was okay. And the person who was working for me didn't seem to be okay with me taking that time, and the bottom line is she worked for me, so yeah. But she clearly was a bit judgmental, and she's got 2 kids of her own, and her husband's self-employed, and just through conversations, kind of
different kind of dad.
Well, she'd been induced in her second pregnancy,
Right.
because her husband had a work meeting that was abroad, so she'd been induced and had the baby early to fit in with his work schedule. Now, it seems like you and I are probably on the same page that would have been don't do that. No. Whereas some people, that's the priority. And I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong, but we clearly, as 2 human beings, had very different opinions of what the priorities were.
Yeah.
But I promised myself that I was going to take time off, and I didn't manage to. And I'm kind of kicking myself a little bit, but it didn't impact life. I was working on Into the Woods with Terry Gilliam.
Yes.
It was brilliant. I mean, the fact that I got a phone call.
That never happened. No, it did in the end.
It did,
Where
yeah.
did
It moved from
to Bath. No.
Yeah. Yes, we did it in Bath. So it moved from Bristol to Bath.
That's right. Yes.
So I got a phone call. Hi, is that right? Hi, it's Terry Gilliam here. I'm like, it's.
You got a call from Terry Gilliam.
Yeah. and okay. Because there's some stuff that needed doing, and I'd been recommended by some people that were on the production, because there were some physical things that needed doing, and he'd been told that I was someone who was well regarded in those fields. Great. Can you come and do the rehearsals in London? I was like, that's my partner's due date. I can't agree to do this. So I got someone to go into the studio to do someone I trusted, to go in and observe the rehearsals, film things, give some good advice, which they would do. And just send me the video so that I could at least review it, and then when we go to the theatre, which is Theatre Royal in Bath,
because it was supposed to be the Bristol Old Vic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there was some nonsense. Someone accused him of tried to cancel him over something. Anyway, and I was adamant that I wasn't going to go back to work until my little girl was we were settled. Tash had to have an emergency C-section. It was like touch and go for a little while. It was a very, very scary time.
Oh, wow.
And and everything was fine. But while she's being stitched up, I'm there with no shirt on, holding my new baby girl, waiting for Tash to come out of theatre. And I get a video call from the production company. I'm like, oh, they're in rehearsal. So I'm holding my daughter, who is less than an hour old, watching videos and giving voice note feedback on this theatre production. I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. This is not... And they were very accommodating because they really wanted me. It was a massive compliment, but they were really accommodating. But I was driving to Bath in the morning, doing the rehearsal, driving back to Colchester of an evening. And I did that when Poppy was 2 weeks old, when my daughter was 2 weeks old. And then they said...
you don't care though, do you?
No, because I wanted to be there. And they were great. And they said, look, we're going to need, as we're teching, it's going to get a bit more hectic. What if we pay for your partner and your daughter to come out? We'll put you up for a few days. Again, Poppy was not... I think she was just 3 weeks old. Yeah. And we just got in the car, went to Bath, and Tash and Poppy stayed in the hotel and kind of pram around Bath while I was in the theatre. And she went into the theatre, and the production team were already lovely, and it was wonderful.
Awesome.
But the fact that they were so accommodating, and I was so annoyed at myself because I was like, I wasn't going to go back to work for a month. I'm like, but actually,
dude, that's different. That's different. That's not making your wife get induced because it doesn't fit into your schedule. No. That's you trying to keep everything up in the air. I mean, and why? That's great. And Tash seemed to understand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's just been doing a 2-week run of My Fair Lady. She understands the industry. It's funny.
I was on tour 18, 19, and I was in, let me get this right, Newcastle. And it was Betsy's first play. That's right, did the show on the Saturday night, drove down from Newcastle to Colchester, saw Betsy's play Monday, so I'd had a day in between, and then drove back to Edinburgh. No, because I didn't stay. I just watched the play and then drove back. I can't remember what it was. There must have been an extra day off or something during the week.
But these are the things we do, that...
Yeah.
I would say, just jumping back a little bit, because
anyway, yes.
you come out of RADA and you're into family, My Family?
Families, half Australian, half Northern.
Okay, and how long were you on that show for?
I did 2 seasons, so that would be about 2 years.
Okay.
91 and 92 is what I did, yeah.
And when that came to an end, did you have anything else lined up straight away? Or
No, you see, here's the thing. Life changed. At the beginning, it was all right, and I got offered a few little things when I came out, but I'd been to RADA, I'd gone straight into television, done television acting, and I had a little bit of, so people were offering me pantos and things like that. Didn't want to do it. Smaller parts in theatre productions. No, I remember being in an audition and for a play, and a guy saying, "Oh, well, you don't really do theatre, do you?" And in my head, I'd been acting on stage since I was 13. I really saw my arse. I mean, I wasn't too rude, but I was saying, I do a couple of seasons of a TV soap, and now you're telling me that I'm not a theatre actor. Thank you. So I then probably didn't work for a year. I turned a couple of things down, and then I didn't get the jobs. I was going up for quite a lot of stuff, and I didn't get the jobs, and I think I didn't get another proper bona fide job until beginning of 94? No, 93. And it was a musical, an actor-musician show called Buddy's Song.
Okay. And did you, over that period, what were you doing to kind of get by and survive?
The usual, working in bars, working in restaurants, working in, kind of... It was quite a bleak time because I didn't really know what was going on. I assumed that I would just work. I didn't think that I wouldn't work. So I thought it was okay for me to turn things down that I didn't really want to do. With hindsight, maybe it would have been a good idea to say yes to some of those things. I stopped saying yes to everything. I think
you were fortunate enough that you came out of drama school into quite a good gig.
Yeah.
And I suppose you didn't have that period that a lot of people come out of drama school, they're like,
Yeah.
or I can't get a job, and they are just
A
things.
lot of my friends were like that very much. They were like really kind of, grinding away at it. For some of them, it was hard. But there's like in my year, Michael Sheen was in my year, But then on the other hand, so I wasn't the top dog by a long chalk, because then you had all of a sudden Michael Sheen had gone off and he was playing Henry V and doing leads in big ITV dramas and stuff like that. So yeah, and then that time became, and then the money ran out, and then I hadn't saved for my tax bill.
Oh.
So the tax man came going, "Hello, you've earned all this money. Why pay us?" I'm like, "Pay you? Pay you for what?" I lived like what I would term like a normal jobbing actor. Really, I did everything and anything. I did fringe plays. I did musicals, and then I kind of got a couple of breaks. I did a film, and I played leads in Greek tragedies, and went to Japan for the first time. Toured in Greece, did a Greek tragedy in Greece. There's loads and loads of.
And I guess that's where you kind of hone your craft, isn't it? So you've done your drama school, and then that jobbing period when you're meeting lots of people, getting lots of different viewpoints. That's kind of where you.
So to my surprise, walking out of drama school and going on the TV is not normal.
Yeah.
Well, it could have been, I suppose. I mean, it's like I said, it was for the other guy. As I told you before, the other guy that was in Families, Jude Law. He just went from strength to strength, and it was quite often. We'd go up for the same parts, but he'd get them.
he's not a bad looking guy, that Jude Law, is he?
No.
Not that you're.
And another really, really nice, one of those guys that you kind of Oscar-nominated actor now, but could walk in the room and he'd go, "Hello." You think?
Yeah, and there's an element of needing to be likable. There are some very famous people that have got bad reputations. Yeah.
God, absolutely. An anecdote. Would you like an anecdote?
I'd love an anecdote.
So anyway, this was leading somewhere else, but so my costume was I had this kind of red silk shirt, sort of tucked in, and these stupidly spray-on shiny latex trousers, and then and I had a biohazard tattoo on my chest, and I had long hair, and it was having a great time. It was brilliant. But we're at the Chelsea Arts Centre down on the King's Road, so there's no money involved. We're all doing it for the love. And my first entrance, I had to hide. The set was multi-layered, but I had to kind of appear from under a table, kind of, like I'd just woken up. So I was there, and I'm under this table this one particular evening, and I'm thinking, it's very drafty. And I reach round, and the super tight latex trousers had split. Now, to keep the shape of the super tight latex trousers, I only got a modesty patch over my things. There's nothing on my bum, so we can have a smooth bum on Gary. So basically, these latex trousers are pulling my cheeks apart.
Lovely.
They're that tight. And I can feel it round, and I can feel, when something's really tight and the sort of fat just bulges round. Like, oh God, oh no, that's my bum hole. I'm out. And my cue's coming out. I'm under a table and I've got to come out from the people. So I quickly take my shirt off and tie my shirt around my waist. I think, all right, I'll come in, and I'm active. And it's like, if that's it, I just face the audience, doing with my back against the wall, and literally, I can feel it's like. And when I stood up as well, they went even tighter, so they were pulling my cheeks apart even more. So it was just like the weirdest performance I've ever done. It's just. And I remember the director coming into the dressing room in the interval going, "What are you doing? That's rubbish. I give you freedom, but you can't just do that and then destroy." And I was like, look
at my bum, look at my bum.
I need new trousers. Yes.
So after a bit of jobbing actor, and I'm sure both of us have got anecdotes we could go for days about stupid stories and things that you dine out on forever, but the big one, I say, if you were to type your name into Google, there's some magnificent photographs of Carlos Diaz from Emmerdale.
See that, or Captain Hook, yeah.
How important was that role, do you think, in your career? Because that seems to be what... I'm not a big soap guy, so it seems to be what people would know Gary Turner for, but was it a big deal?
It was a huge deal. funnily enough, about the time I was doing the 12th night thing, I picked up, I started, often I go through this, I stopped saying yes to things. But around 98, 99, I started saying yes to everything, and I picked up a book called The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book.
I've not read it, but I'm familiar with it.
I did that process, and so sort of from 98 onwards, I was saying yes to everything, and I was, I write as well and do scripts, and I've always struggled with procrastination and blocks and not doing as much as I think I should do, or not, But anyway, and that's that stage. So then that led to 98, 99. Going into 2000 was a hugely prolific time. I was jumping from job to job. Some paid okay, some not paid, some paid quite well. I would finish one play on. I'd finish a play in Liverpool on the Saturday night, and I'd start rehearsals on the Monday morning in Leicester. It was just bang, 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 and that went right the way through. I'm working at good theatres like Leicester Haymarket, Manchester Royal Exchange, just working, loving it. And it was never about being famous. It was just work to do it. I liked doing it. And then I was doing a Christmas show, and I'd, funnily enough, gone back to Theatre Clwyd, where I'd all started. I was doing this Christmas show there, another actor-musician show, Dick Whittington. And the call came through, it was like, oh, they're looking for a wacky chef on Emmerdale. Do you want to audition for it? And I was like, I'm doing this show. I'm in Wales. I'm doing 12 shows a week. When am I supposed to, And they said, well, we'll see if we can arrange for you. So, okay, so on my one day off, and it's like when you do Christmas shows, it's like, And at that stage, an audition for a regular in a soap is kind of, they come and they go. It's kind of, the world and his mother is going up for this part. Did the first audition, and it went very well, and I got a nice feeling from it. I went back and I went, okay, see how that goes. So I'm still doing the show at Theatre Clwyd, and then about a week later the call comes back and says they want to see you again, but this time in Leeds to do a screen test with Sam, who played Bernice, whom I didn't know at that time. I was like, oh, okay. Different kettle of fish this time. It was like, get the scenes, bang it out, make sure that I was dressed right, that I was going to be there. It wasn't just a case of, yeah, I'll turn up. It was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to do my utmost to do that. I walked through the door, and I remember sitting in the waiting room. There's a couple of other Spanish guys there, and then went into the studio and did the screen test with Sam, and I clicked with Sam straight away. Went back to the Christmas show, thought that was good, heard nothing. Didn't. I was kind of, the show finished, I think it was about 4 weeks or so. I'd kind of written it off, but I kind of couldn't write it off, and I was kind of phoning my agent and going, what's going on? And she said, they haven't said no, Gary. They haven't said no. If I speak to them, they're not saying, and I said, and by this time I'd got another job lined up. It was to play Rochester in Jane Eyre. Sense and Sensibility, that's the one, yeah. I was going to play, which is a great part.
Yeah.
And it was it was good theatre, and it was like, I was kind of looking forward to doing that, I was doing that, and then the call came. That is all down to saying yes. It's to being open and to doing it. It's the same mentality as that lad who wants to be in this youth theatre and that youth theatre and all the others. I can't stress this enough. If that kind of, it's not only being positive, not being falsely positive, just getting on with it, doing it. Even though I'd been a bit famous before, I was not ready for what Emmerdale was coming by. And I remember my first day, top bit of advice that I've ever had, it was the first day of filming in the studio. I'd done a bit on location, and I had 14 scenes to film that day. And it was, we were walking onto set at, well, you know what it is, you turn up at 7 for makeup, and then you start filming about 8 in studio. And I remember I had all these pages, and there was a guy in it, put his hand on my shoulder. It was, we were walking down the corridor to the studio, and he went, mate, stop it. I was like, what? He says, one page at a time. One page at a time. And that's some of the best advice I have, because, you know, I'm going in to film a scene and I'm looking at a scene that I'm not sure of 5 scenes away. How can I do my best for that? You know. And I remember being in the green room, and everyone was lovely. It was a really lovely bitch. It was a nice time. But I remember being in the green room and saying, oh, I want to go, I've got some time off. I'm going to go into town. I'd say time off, like I had a scene in the morning and then a scene in the afternoon. I'm going to go into Leeds, which is a great city. And I said, is there a bus stop near here? And literally everybody in the green room, it was a big green room, went, what? It's like a bus stop to get a bus into town. Everyone went, mate, you can get the bus today, but in a couple of weeks, a couple of months' time, you ain't going to be getting a bus. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be that guy. Just because I'm famous, I can still get a bus. Cut 2. By that time I was living with my girlfriend in Manchester and commuting from Manchester to Leeds. It started to go out. It was about 6 weeks before What You Film goes out.
Yeah.
So I'd been in it a couple of months. So my stuff had started to go out. I'd started to be recognised in the street, and I used to get the train from Leeds to Manchester. And I remember getting this train. I was at rush hour. And I don't know if you've ever experienced those trains, but it's like anywhere. They get absolutely rammed. And you're doing it in the vestibule area. I'm literally up against the toilet, along with everybody else. Everybody there can recognise me. And you're their property. Oh, hey, all right, how you doing? You know, what do you want? And I just, this kind of, I can't do this again. I can't do this. I don't want to, I just want to listen to my stereo. I just want to be normal. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be pushed up against people who, because the thing is about soap fame is that you're their property. They love, people who love soaps love you. But you're in the corner of their kitchen. You're in the corner of their living room. They can stop you. They can rewind you. You're kind of like, you know, that's part of, they know you. They don't, but they know you. Interesting thing, like when, I think I said to you before, I think about 11 million people watched the wedding episode of, it was like a Christmas episode. And you know, it's a lot of people. Because nobody recognises you as the actor. I was recognised, and I can count it, 3 times. People said to me, you're Gary Turner. You're Gary Turner, the actor off the telly. Of the thousands of other times, it was Carlos. And the world changed. The world, you know, it's like, I walked in today, I got myself a cup of coffee. Sometimes, you know, I'd like to sit on the pavement, not sit on the pavement, sit on the, you know, at a table, have a cappuccino or whatever. I couldn't do that. I mean, it was like, I could, but it was a different activity from what I did. It was like you were working, you were being nice to people, which is great, you know. And it's sort of like, if you don't want to be famous, don't go on the television. I never didn't want it. It was like the learning curve that came with it was exceptional, and it became, like I say, hallucinogenic. I'd walk into somewhere and you'd hear Carlos, and it wasn't that people talked about you; it's that they stopped talking. You could silence a room. Like you'd walk into like a crowded bar, and it would silence the room for a second, and that makes you kind of like, oh fuck. Here we go. And, you know, you get used to it and you live with it. And then, of course, you've got the whole nightlife.
But nothing really prepares you for that. So my experience of fame is far more limited than that. We did Britain's Got Talent in 2007.
Yeah.
And got through to the live semi-finals.
Yeah.
And it was like 8.5 or 9 million people watched the episode. So there's a lot of people watching it.
Yeah.
And I know it's not the same as soap fame because there's not a character behind it, but I was the guy in our act that did the talking. So, and the day after the show's gone out, we just got on the train and went home. And nothing can prepare you for the fact that 9 out of 10 people that you're walking past are like,
I know you.
Yeah, but when people say about, when you were saying about people feel like you belong to them or something, and it was about 2 days after the show went out, and I went to the zoo. Didn't think anything of it because no one prepares you for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm in the cafe at the zoo, and I say mobbed. It was a very uncomfortable time. There might have been 10 people came over to my table, and they're around me, and I was really, really uncomfortable. I'm just sitting there having lunch with my friend, and they were like, because it was 2007, so it was like more, can we have your autograph than can we have a selfie? But I'm like, what do? You don't want to go, no, fuck off. But at the same time, you're like, I've nothing has prepared me for this situation. So I've signed a few autographs and felt like the biggest fraud in the world, and then wanted to go home.
Oh, imposter syndrome,
But I mean, you would have had that ongoing because you were in the show for 90 episodes to begin with, and then you've done some extras after that, or?
Over the space of about 2.5 years, I filmed about 300 episodes.
Wow, okay, that's masses.
Used to like going out, and this is another thing that I learned, is that if you went to a bar where people were drinking, funnily enough, as it got on, the girls would want to talk to you and the blokes would want to fight you. There would be, you'd be there, like if you and I were at the bar, we'd have a conversation, some guy would come over, and 9 times out of 10, and I'm, this sounds like I'm very ungrateful, it's not, would barge in and go, all right, you're Carlos, can I buy you a drink? And you go, no, I'm all right, I'm just talking to my mate, and I've got a drink, thanks, but nice to meet you, mate, cheers, thanks, all the best. Who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah. You think you're better than me?
No, I'm just here having a drink. Well, I'll buy you a drink. So, your evening can go one of two ways. You either leave, you either drink with the bloke, or you have a fight with the bloke. That situation turned up so many times. And here's another one, and it's being honest. I don't mean to be big-headed, but it's because you're on the television. The girls want to sleep with you.
Yeah, and that one took me by surprise. And there was a girl that I was briefly seeing, and she was quite a nice girl. Yeah. She was very attractive, but she wanted me to, we'd only been on a date or two, and she wanted me to come and meet her mum, and she introduced me to her mum as, he's the one off the telly. I'm like, okay, fine, and it does devalue anything like that, and it, it's great that you can go out and you can meet girls and you can take girls home, but that wasn't kind of...
Oh, the young ones live on it. I mean, I know guys, you do personal appearances as well, which is a great side earner. If you can turn up to a club, they'll give you $1,000 for spending an hour in their club, signing some autographs at a desk and stuff, and the amount of sex that goes on is incredible. But it's why, and it was like part of the learning curve. It's why celebrities hang out together.
Yeah.
Literally, if you wanted to, I just want to go for a beer. You go to a place where nobody cares.
Yeah. And I'm very fortunate that when Warhol talks about being famous for 15 minutes, I think a week after the show went out, a week after the live shows, I could go anywhere else in the country and no one would care.
Yeah.
And you keep that kind of local fame for a little bit longer in your hometown, a year later people are like, oh, you were really good, you're the guy off there, and that's kind of nice and warm.
See, I think I've given it a bad rap because I've talked a lot about the negative situation. It was a learning curve. A lot of it was like, you make people happy, and kids, and doing a lot of panto as well. You come into contact with kids, and I just remember kids who want to be actors as well. They come and go, I want to be an actor. Have you got any advice for me? And it's like, yes, act. Do lots of acting. If you want to be an actor, just do lots of acting wherever you can find it, and you'll find your way. And there's that, and there's all the going into hospices and children's hospitals and stuff, and you bring joy to people, and that's what we do. We are into. I am under no illusion that I kind of like. Come the day where you've got to decide to who's needed or not, you're going to need a surgeon. You ain't going to need me. Do you know what I mean?
But your ability to do good is increased because you can bring joy to people's lives, and it gives you access to...
Yes. And it's also a lovely thing. And the weirdest thing, of course, at the height of it, when everyone knows your name and, the money's coming in... you get loads of stuff for free. Everybody wants to give you things. I remember we were doing this promotion for Soap Awards or something, a photo shoot or whatever, and it was with Mazda. We were all sitting on a Mazda car, And the guy was like, "Do you want Mazda for a couple of months?" I was like, "I've just got a new car," but you know, and it was just like you'd go to a restaurant and they go, "No, don't pay." You'd be like, "Could do that now."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but getting free stuff is always good fun.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and lying, it's not all bad. I mean, you get some obsessive fans as well. That's kind of, I had a woman write to me and wanted me to marry her dog in her garden.
You didn't marry her dog.
I didn't know, but she used to send me filofaxes every year. Like good ones as well, leather-bound filofaxes, obviously showing my age, from the dog. And she eventually, I did write back and I said, "I can't. I'm so sorry, but thank you for the thought." And she said, "Well, do you mind if I have the ceremony anyway, and then you can marry the dog?"
Imagine there'd be like a little cardboard cutout or something.
And I was like, I thought, and I remember talking, because there's part of the publicity department there that there's a lot of weird mail, a lot of weird stuff comes in, and especially it's sort of like I nearly was physically beaten up by 2 women in Tesco's because I was sleeping with the vicar's wife. He is a man of God, and it started off okay. I was like, "Oh yeah, you know, he's a man of God, and you're sleeping with his wife." And I was like, "Yeah, they write it down for me." It's like, "No, you should leave her alone." I was like, "Well, you're gonna have to watch. Stay tuned in." "No, you leave her alone." I'm like, "It's not real. It's not real." yeah. And it's like I left my shopping in the aisle and walked out because it was just like they wouldn't back off.
So I mean.
Yeah,
it's another world. It's incredible, and I think with social media and that kind of thing now, perhaps people get more of an insight into the lives of soap stars and things because like this didn't exist back then.
Yeah. Death threats as well. It's like, especially with because my character was big, but it wasn't like Marlon big. You know, it wasn't Paddy and Marlon, and those are the characters that have gone on for. You know, years and years and years, and if one is plotting to kill another or something like that, the real death threats come in. And
people are so engaged and invested.
And I remember that, you know, going up to the publicity department going, "What do we do with this?" And they would have a line to the police and somebody that they spoke to if they thought something was serious. And there was one guy who wrote to a cast member and it was a detailed schedule, a plan of how to kidnap and kill one of the actors who was playing a bad character. Like, he said he could get hold of the van and this is where they do it, and they'd pick him up here and they'd pick, you know, it was like, you know, and this is the kind of stuff, well, we might just chuck that one to the to the police. But I remember being advised saying, just say to the lady that it's not worth you marrying the dog unless you can be there in person, because, you know.
And where do you go from there? So Emmerdale comes to an end, and Captain Hook and Panto, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But do you miss the craziness that is being a British soap star, or do you want something different? Do you want to go back to the theatre? What happens at the end of a run like that?
When I found out I was leaving, I had a big out. You know, the world was my oyster really. And what I did when I'm doing TV, I always say I want to do theatre, and when I'm doing theatre, I always say I want to do TV. So I was gagging to get back on the stage. I think I filmed my last episode in November. I went down to Windsor, I did Panto, and then I went straight into a play after that, and I did a couple of plays and then played Macbeth, and I spent a year doing that, and then I turned a couple of parts down. I didn't want to get back into, I think Doctors came, and I said, well, I'm not sure of that. And spent a couple of years really just going back to jobbing. I found it again frustrating. I was being told, like before I went into Emmerdale, they were saying, "Oh, they want a name." And then when I came out of Emmerdale, they don't want a name from a soap.
Yeah.
And you know, I've always had my eye on. I don't mind what I do, but I've always wanted to like I say, I grew up watching Blade Runner, and it's like, you know, I wanted to do like work with Shane Meadows. I don't know if you know who Shane Meadows is, or, you know, people like do all that kind of stuff. And it kind of, because you do soap, that kind of goes out the window a little bit. Although I did end up working in Nottingham and at the Playhouse, so it was kind of quite well rounded, but not the big stuff that I wanted. Didn't come really.
And that was a while ago. You did jump back into Emmerdale briefly, didn't you?
It was a couple of weeks.
2001?
2004.
Oh, 2004, okay.
2004. But yeah, it was literally 8 episodes.
What keeps you busy now? What occupies your time? You're a dad of 2 teenagers.
Yeah, I still work. I mean, I played. You know, I do a lot of audio work as well. I tour a lot. You know, was in Japan recently with the Bodyguard. I mean, all over the country. Bits and pieces. I was at Casualty last year. You know, like again, back to jobbing. Really, I'm kind of one of those actors that doesn't quite go away.
Lingers.
Yeah. So I do it, but I was kind of thinking it's about time now that it's been a funny couple of years. It's hard to find that balance of I stopped saying yes under the guise of being a dad, because it's very safe to not say yes to things. You know, it's very safe to think, oh, I'm not going to do that, there's no money in it. Oh, I'm not going to do that because it's not really my bag, I've not done that before. You know, it's sort of like in the past, and I think I'm just coming out of that. Now the girls are getting to a certain age where I can spend more time away, that I'm starting to go, oh, okay, what can I do? What can I say yes to now? You know, what's
coming on a daft podcast.
Sitting in a pub cellar.
So that brings us on to what next? So like you're absolutely not past it. You're young and healthy and fit.
Young and healthy. Yeah.
But what's next for Gary Turner? What would you love to do, or what have you got that's in the pipeline already?
They are making a Blade Runner TV series. So if you happen to watch this, I would like to be seen for a part in that, please. I think it's filming over in Ireland in the summer. But that kind of thing, a film, or I'd be happy. I don't know. Back out on tour, more of the same. I've written some things. I think it's time to sort of get those out. In the past, been employed to do one-man show. It was a one-man show called Toro Toro, and I kind of got a taste for doing a one-man show, so I might try and do that, get that together. There's a lot of things that are going on, but nothing that is I can talk about with certainty.
Okay, well, there's still some years in the old dog yet then.
Oh God, yeah.
And if people want to find out,
I'm not going to retire. There won't be a day when I go, oh, I'm done. Something will come up and I'll go, oh yeah, I'll do that. You know, it's kind of, you know. Did you ever see a film called Venus with Peter O'Toole?
Oh yes, yeah, I'm familiar with that.
It was an old man. It's about an old pervy old man. You know, Lawrence of Arabia, a beautiful, beautiful man. But you know, he gets to it. You don't stop.
No,
you don't stop. If you love it, you love it, and you're going to play the pervy old geezer just before you die. Do you know what I mean? And I think,
well, not just the pervy old geezer. I mean, we're looking at
as in contrast to the beautiful Peter O'Toole. But
you're looking at like Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen,
Shakespeare. I'm still up for it. I'm still. You know, I'm basically still that kid who wants to go to drama school. I'm still that kid who wants to do everything, anything.
Just doing as much acting as you can.
Yeah, and paying the bills, though. That's what you got to do now. It's sort of,
And the bills get bigger when you've got kids.
Don't they just?
And girls are expensive. And if people want to find out more about Gary Turner, do you have like stuff online, website, socials?
I do. You can find me on social media, Gary Turner, on social media and Instagram. I think I'm Gary J. Turner on Insta. I have a website, Gary-Turner.com, which is all about me, which works really well at the moment on a computer but not on a phone. I've got, if you like Doctor Who, I am in quite a few Doctor Who adventures for B7 Big Finish Media.
Gary's all over the internet. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's a fantastic chat. I'm so looking forward to listening to this and editing it.
You've got a lot to edit.
There's a lot to edit. There is a lot to edit. But it's fascinating. Like, I'm sitting here riveted and there's so much more to talk about. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We'll wrap up there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool.